Welcome, Saulius. You're our guest star for tonight on Ultrarunning Underdogs. And this is a special New Year's Eve edition. It is December 31st, and we are going to talk to you about some of your ultra-long adventure runs that we've seen you post on Facebook and Strava. So one of the longest runs I think you did was a partially unsupported 123-mile. And correct me if I'm wrong, but so we really knew that we had to get you on our show because that's like an incredible accomplishment for, especially for somebody who only ran a short number of miles in comparison the previous calendar year. So go ahead, Mike, and take it away.
Yeah. So welcome, Saulius, and it's nice to have you on the show. And I was really impressed with some of those Strava runs that you've done. That's like, wow. So, well, just to get started, what got you into ultra running, these long runs? How did you get started in this? It's an unusual hobby.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this show, Joel and Mike. I'm really happy and glad to be on this show. So what got me into these ultra long runs was just partly curiosity, partly boredom, and probably maybe the biggest thing is the fact that I used to depend on someone to take me to hikes on every weekend, or I would have my own vehicle, which I've only had for a year, and I've decided to try running just the distance that I typically hike in a day, which was about 30 miles. And one day I decided to run that distance. I ran a full marathon and I was able to get it in 5 hours, and I was surprised. I had no idea I could do that. But that was on flat ground, and I used to just go do like a loop with my dad before around St. Helens, and that took a while, like 18 hours. And on that same trip, I saw trail runners, and I thought, man, that would have been really crazy to learn to do that, to have those abilities. But at the same time, first I would have to learn how to do flat marathons, not mountain running. So 5 years passed and I haven't done anything until my car broke down, and I thought, well, what the heck, let me try running a marathon. And I was impressed, and that was just 2019 August 20th. So I started increasing the mileage, because there was a trail that I've never actually reached the end to. I reached the end, which was the Centennial Trail, and then I went back, and then eventually, a few months later, I learned how to do the whole trail back and forth, which was 62 miles. So to me, it was about just the experience and figuring out how to do it and to be able to cover trails that were on my map, because I was interested to see how it was and how to do it. Hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What's the longest run that you have done?
The longest one was on November 11th, I believe, 2020. It was 155 miles. So you were a little bit off, Joel.
22 miles off.
122-mile one, but
22 miles short, which is embarrassing.
But the difference is the 122 was very significant in the fact that it had the most elevation gain, which was on Strava it said it was 22,000. So that's an incredible elevation.
Oh yes, and elevation is a big deal.
So
yeah. And but the 155 one, that was mostly flat. So in comparison, there was barely any elevation. It's probably like 1,000 feet of gain as far as I remember. So it wasn't too much, but it was the one that took the most days, because by that time you're running days, not just hours.
Yeah, that's right. And
Um,
my understanding is that these aren't events that you're signing up for. You just go out and do it. Do you do
oh
these
yeah,
alone or with a friend or?
no, they're just kind of occasion based. I don't necessarily plan too far ahead, although the 155-mile one, that was the longest anticipated one, actually it was supposed to be 180, to be running from my current place that I live in Seattle to my parents' house, which is in Vancouver, Washington. And that was supposed to be about 184 miles, to be more specific, but um, I didn't have enough time, and the occasion was that it was my grandma's birthday, so
Hmm.
I was trying to make it on time, but I realized I would have uh, ran till morning or till the day of the celebration, and when I would have gone back, I would have been tired, exhausted, and would have wanted to sleep. And for them, it would have been this time to celebrate, so I didn't want to come in kind of rude in that regard. So I
Yeah.
asked my dad to pick me up and drive me the remaining 36 miles or whatever. Yeah. So
Wow. So
it's an
you
interesting
cut
experience
it
for
short
sure.
to 150 or so.
Oh
That's
yeah,
funny.
I mean, the longest plan I was thinking of doing, I think it was going to be like 210 or something like that, where I would have ran to Portland and a little bit part of Portland and then back from like one parallel from one highway from like I-5 to across and then to 205 and back north. But that was like my ideal, I best case scenario kind of plan. But as the weather went on, as the days went on, I realized it's getting worse and worse.
Hmm.
Mainly, I guess, mainly with my mm, I don't know, like the mood. I had so many mood changes and like feelings that I was gonna say, looking back at the weather and my mood, that it was getting worse and worse, but it's not
Hmm.
quite the truth. I mean, at some points it was getting better, and at some points it's getting worse. And in the end, basically, I didn't want to make it the run just about me. If it was just about me, and if I had all the time in the world, yes, I would have made it to 184, and maybe beyond, maybe to like 200, 210, possibly with the longest option. Although, I mean, I would have been in such bad condition by that time. So at some point, it helped me out that I, I didn't, that I had help get picked up, and that there was some kind of additional event that I was kind of commuting
Yeah.
to, So,
Well,
um, yeah, so
yeah.
it ended up being just a way to get to my parents' home, just a more exciting way, I guess. Like
Well, I
a
Yeah.
can tell
occasion.
you, yeah, in the 40-mile runs that I've done, my mood definitely gets worse and worse as I progress. But you did 150, so I can only imagine, you know.
155.
Yeah, those
Gotta
last
get,
five are even harder
gotta give him.
after.
You gotta give him credit for every mile, because most people, they don't even want to bike that far, and here you are
Mm,
on foot for multiple days. So it's very impressive that you're able to go that far.
yeah.
So I guess my follow up
Thank you.
question is, what's your most memorable run? If maybe it was this run, maybe it was the 122-mile run, but which one would you say was the most memorable, and uh,
Um,
and why?
I think maybe my first 100 miler was my most memorable. Is uh, maybe either
Mm,
that one or maybe the loop by going from Seattle to I don't know. They're just so different. There's some of these are so different that I kind of want to include all of them, but I think realistically, maybe my first 100 miler was the most memorable because of how bizarre the whole situation was, and how new I was to all these experiences, and I was just like going crazy in some regards, and like
Yeah.
I was prepared in such a awkward way, like with weird gear, and
Mm.
I mean, I pretty much was carrying all my liquids for the first 50 miles, which I guess it's
Yeah.
not that far off with what I kind of already do. I mean, I tend to average between 30 and 40 miles now, just kind of as my more sweet spot. So I guess 50 miles is not that bad, but considering that I brought a whole thermos of warm tea on my first 100
Mm.
miler, um, I think maybe
Yeah.
Yeah, so
some sandwiches. I don't remember exactly. Probably some fruit. Yeah, some
Y-
whole
y-
like
Yeah,
apples.
that's an interesting topic. Yeah, when you're going that kind of distance, I mean, do you like run with like a big backpack, or do you just keep it
It,
really
it
light?
was like I was running with probably what I would describe maybe like a 30
Mid-size?
liter these military backpacks that
Oh,
I got
right.
from one of my instructors. It's like a camouflage. Maybe you guys seen it. It's somewhat popular to own. So it wasn't necessarily a running pack, but it was quite comfortable in my opinion. Um, Even though maybe some people would have said, "Oh, that's not very efficient backpack, or it moves so much, too much." But for me, that's like the only thing I knew, or the only thing I owned at the time. So it's it's okay for me. It's
yes,
just
Yeah.
yeah,
it
I
sounds
kind of
like
overpacked it.
it was the most memorable for you because of all the surprises and kind of like how awkward your gear setup was, and
Mm.
your hydration strategy might not have been perfectly dialed in.
Because I was carrying so much, and I didn't. I was like putting so much stress on myself with I think it was like 25 pounds or something, and
Yeah, that's a
I
lot.
was
I mean, I think when Mike and I go on ultra runs, we try to limit our packs to, let's say, 12 pounds or so. So
Yeah.
25 is like very heavy.
yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, I
Um,
was impressed when I looked at the stats of your most recent long run. I was looking at the average pace, and it was like faster than my race pace in the Bigfoot. It was like, wow, he's fast too. I
Thank you.
wish I could
Well,
run far and fast,
If I
but I
guess
can't do
the
both.
recent one was was the kind of more intentionally. I was trying to get it as a faster run, specifically, I was trying to do it under 24 hours, but that's
Mm,
been my like I don't know fourth attempt maybe of trying to get it on a 100 miler under 24 hours. Because the previous attempts, I might have started and gotten up to like mile 40, mile 70, and later I realized, oh darn, I ran too fast, I sprinted too fast, I
mm,
made like incorrect strides, and suddenly I'm feeling injured again. Um, so I tend to quit my runs earlier and not complete a full 100, even though in theory I could have gone faster hundreds than before. So this one is finally just seeing where I was at. Like I knew I could get a faster 100 miler than 32 hours because that was my
mm,
first. I did a 33 and a half as my first 100 miler. Then I did 32 hours as my next second fastest. And now I got 29 hours. Yeah, which is my third fastest. But they're all, I mean, to be true, they're all different elevation gain. So,
yeah.
but I think all of them are under 10,000 feet of gain. So it's not like they were super hilly, although, I mean, there is a difference between like 5,000 and 10,000 over a course of 100, but it's not the most, I guess, unless there's like super steep hills in the middle, which sometimes there are, but not. I don't necessarily go into parks if it's not intentional, or there's not necessarily steep inclines too much.
But that 10,000 feet of gain definitely adds up. A lot of runners just aren't used to doing that much elevation in a single day or in 2 days, for example. I think. Mike, why don't you go ahead and shift gears a little bit, and we'll ask you some other types of questions about your runs.
Yeah, so I'm curious, with that kind of distance, and what's been your injury history? Have you had problems? What kind of problems have you had, and how have you overcome it? And have you changed any strategies?
I started with injuries pretty much ever since my second marathon, and even up till now, I have injuries as well, but they're just different types. Well, the first one from my marathon, I'm not really sure how to describe it. I might have gotten a runner's knee, I'm assuming, but I'm not perfect at. I haven't really read through the definitions, and I'm not really an expert at identifying what exactly they were, but I think the closest description is something like runner's knee after my second marathon. Then I took a break, maybe a month break from running, just hiking, did some hiking, and then resumed, did a 20 miler, and it's like I wasn't injured at all. So I was very surprised and glad it worked out that way. Then after my first 100 miler, my right leg was too constricted with just having a anti-fatigue insert, and it helped the padding on my foot, but at the same time it reduced the area inside my shoes. So for some reason my right foot only got inflamed, and it's really in pain. And then I started limping at like mile 70, or I realized I started limping at mile 70. So it became like a 30-mile walk, or I jogged a little bit at the end, but it was just very frustrating because I just want to get done with it. But there's so many things just conflicting. Like I was cold, tired, exhausted, and then hurt. It's just a whole mess of things. So
that sounds like the story of my that sounds like the story of my whole ultra career. Walking the whole thing and miserable and tired.
And then, I think, I don't know how worried I was at that point after that injury, but maybe not as worried as my bigger injury that came in, like probably near July. I don't know. It's about 6 months ago. So I was walking to work, and then I tripped over a railroad. I skidded, or I fell on my hands. I scraped my hands, and I scraped my knee and hit my knee. Left patella, and so that would have been kind of okay. I probably could have healed from that if I just reasonably decided not to go running, or for maybe a couple weeks, maybe a month. That might have been perfect. But instead, I already had a plan to go running to Olympia to meet my parents in Marysville Park, and I thought, I don't want to miss out on this opportunity. If I could still run, why not do it? So I was being pretty stubborn. And
we know that temptation.
Yeah, so I didn't know if I could run it, but I tried for the first 6 miles, and it was okay, and I did it, and that
Nice.
that was 84 miles. So
Wow.
So
yeah,
you're really able to push through some discomfort and pain, it sounds like, and whereas some runners would just totally take off a whole
well,
month.
Yeah.
I guess yeah. It's just yeah, it's a big temptation to do it, and what's interesting is that the end of the 84 miles, I was feeling better than my first 100 miler at mile 70. So like that's the comparison of how much better prepared I was yet
Mm.
even after the injury. So
Yeah, maybe
it's like if I
physically
keep
Yeah.
and
preparing that
mentally.
way,
Yeah, physically and mentally probably better prepared, because you never
yeah,
really
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Like,
I shouldn't have done it, which is like
Hmm.
kind of
and then
it was hard
somehow
to
your
convince
somehow
myself
your
to
leg
do it.
was doing better than your first 100 miler. That's impressive. So
Yeah, yeah, it was weird.
let me ask you a little bit about, and I don't know if we touched on it already, your hydration strategy and your nutrition strategy. I think you told me before that about every 10 miles you take a planned break for a snack. And
Yeah.
maybe if you could touch on that briefly and then tell us about like what kind of gear do you always bring with you, and maybe what kind of gear would you not bring with you anymore?
Um, so my hydration and nutrition strategy, I, I pretty much developed it over a bunch of runs, and I had to experiment. I had no idea how long my water would last. Um, but what I found out is, especially on more cooler weather, on cooler runs, I could basically have maybe a liter of fresh water and about a liter of
Hmm.
juice to last me about 30, 40 miles, maybe
Wow.
slightly more. And then I'll be eating a gel pack and at least a gel pack and a granola every 10 miles. And then I'll have additional snacks like another type of granola bar and maybe some gummies, just kind of to munch on while in between the breaks. So if I'm get slightly hungry, I'll still have something to chew on and kind of keep my mind off things. Um, and yeah, but I always pack, and sometimes if I don't necessarily eat it if I don't want to. Like I won't eat the additional snacks. I'll definitely eat the main ones. Um, and sometimes I'll bring beef jerky, but it's not really that much. Um,
So have you
and
ever have you ever ran out of food, or do you always kind of pack like more than enough? Because it sounds like your
I
pack
think
is actually pretty heavy.
usually I pack more than enough.
Mm.
But like the last run, I think I've accidentally ate too much, like
Hmm.
at the wrong breaks. I took extra breaks because the water refills didn't align quite exactly with the 10-mile markers, and I wasn't watching well enough. So I think I ate like a gel and a granola bar at my water break when I probably shouldn't have. So at the end, I realized, oh crap, I don't have
Mm.
my additional my calculated snack. So I was like, well, okay, well that sucks, but I still have additional snacks, even if it's not gels. I still brought extra, so it was
Yeah,
okay.
it's good to be
um,
prepared. So
Yeah.
yeah, and either
Um,
way, I mean, I wasn't out in the wild. I could have easily just bought some kind of warm meal and whatnot. It was day at some points there were daylight. I mean, much of the run, a lot of it was in daylight. Not all of it. Maybe most of it was at night. But it's not like I was gonna die or anything. But I always try to do these near self-supported runs now that I figured out how to do them. But I didn't start off like this. I mean, I started off with that intention, but I always would give up. And oh man, it was so tempting, and that's what I did. I just stopped at a store or a Subway, and like maybe at, I don't know, mile 40, depending on where I'd run. Yeah, like especially once I ran to towards east, towards I-90, towards Issaquah, I'd always stop at the Subway, and it'd be so convenient, so nice to just stop for a warm meal in the middle run. I mean, it take like
It
30
sure
minutes,
is.
so it's kind of a time waster, but it's
I've
still a
done the
neat thing to
same.
do.
A real meal.
But now I'm just constantly trying to improve my strategy, and with these near self-supported runs, and I don't see a problem. I mean, I used to call them self-supported, but now I realize people consider stopping at stores for water not self-supported, which to me is kind of bizarre and stupid, but whatever. I mean, those are the rules. But what's interesting, for the last run, I stopped at a store once, and then I stopped at a creek another time. So it's kind of like a mix. So
Yeah. Well, these aren't races, you're just kind
yeah,
of running against yourself and trying to get
yeah,
new efforts. So I think it's totally fine. Hey, I have a
yeah.
question. Do you do any cross training or strength training or anything else besides running, walking?
I used to, or I still do hiking, which is kind of similar to running, pretty much, but I'll be carrying a heavier weight. Now, all the additional stuff that I normally do outside of running is not for running. I just enjoy doing it by itself. But for running, I have done some stretching exercises that my physical therapist has been recommending me to do. And some of it does include some strength training. But to be honest, I haven't really focused on it as much as I really would like to and should focus on it, especially like the amount of time I spend or the frequency that I do it. I know for sure that it's definitely not enough, and I would really like to get into it because I know that would be beneficial, and just by learning from you guys um, and what other guides have been recommending me to do. So that probably would be my goal for next, or yeah, for the coming up year 2021. Yeah, because I don't even own a bike, and I think maybe I'll get a bike. I'm not sure yet, but
Cool. Yeah, we're all kind of figuring this out, and no one plan works for everybody ideally, So
yeah.
yeah.
Cool. So I know our time is almost up, but I would love to ask you, like, could you tell us, do you have any goals for 2021, and where might people find you online so that we could kind of, maybe they want to track and see what you're doing in the future?
Um. Well, my goals aren't very specific at this point, and I'm trying to do that on purpose to not like overly put high expectations on myself. And um, 'cause if I set very like specific goals with like distance or speed, then I'm afraid I'm just gonna ignore what's more important, which is firstly healing.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I'm not that good at judging how healed I am. So, um, but the main thing is I would like to heal better, and then maybe do work on my pace and do more elevation runs. And maybe I don't. This might be too early. Maybe get a 100 miler under 24 hours, but that's probably like an equivalent to getting my marathon close to 3 hours. But like as an analogy for shorter distance, I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah, I think you might be closer to a 24-hour 100-miler than, I don't know, a 3-hour marathon versus a 4-hour marathon. That's a huge difference.
Oh, for sure. Because I started with the 5-hour as my first attempt, and now I got into 3:55. That's with like 1,200 feet of gain. Yeah. So, and the first one that I did, I think that was slightly less feet of gain. So, but yeah, increasing all that, that's a lot of dedication and different type of running, and not just running. I'd have to do the additional strength training, and I forgot what they're called. Just like working to improve speed,
like running drills and things like that. Yeah. So I think do you have a way, like a Facebook page or something where people could follow?
Oh, yes. I have a Facebook page, and I think we could include that.
Yeah,
Maybe
let's toss a link in the description of the video, because I'm sure people might want to see what you're up to.
I have a Facebook page, I have an Instagram, and I have a Strava account, and recently I've obtained a Garmin account, which I think that's shareable. I'm just learning about it, so I'm not really. Yeah, it would be like a Garmin Connect, but I'm not really sure how that works exactly. But that one will maybe have more information, although it will transfer to my Strava, so I'll have
perfect.
That.
All right. Well, I would like to thank you very much for joining us on tonight's interview, and I wish you the best of luck in your future running endeavors. And I don't know, Mike, did you have anything you wanted to say?
It was awesome having you on the show, and thanks for sharing your adventures and some of your experiences. And we look forward to seeing some of your crazy stuff into 2021. And maybe we'll invite you when we go around Mount St. Helens. We did that last year, and that'd be awesome. Have a party of 3 or something.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to break 14 and a half hours, so maybe we could shoot for like 12.
Yeah, you can show us how it's done.
I don't know.
That might be interesting. Yeah, I've never done it. I've never done it as a run, so I'd be interested to see what time I can get.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, let's qualify the word run. We start out running, but there's definitely unrunnable.
I'm totally fine with just going at whatever pace the slowest person is at, and if we're doing it as a group, I'm totally fine with that. At least I'm fine with it now. That's what
you can see
that'll be Joel.
You can see the mountain in the background of our video here. It's, if you couldn't tell, that we also like going around this mountain. It's pretty fun. But anyway, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
See y'all later.
See y'all
later.
Bye.